A preface: the veil between worlds. What you see around you isn't real, and what you don't see is always present. This ancient Kashmiri proverb echoed in my mind as I journeyed to this land of unparalleled beauty and haunting secrets. Kashmir, a paradise on earth, is scarred by unseen wounds, its history whispering tales of tragedy and resilience. It's a place where the veil between the living and the dead wears thin, where echoes of the past bleed into the present. Yusuf's heart pounded with anticipation as his plane touched down in Srinagar. 20 years had passed since he had last seen his homeland. Now a successful architect, he was drawn back by his parents' failing health. It was a sensory overload, a heady mix of nostalgia and apprehension. The car finally pulled into the driveway of his childhood home.
"Mom, Dad, I'm home." His father smiled and embraced his son.
The first few days were a whirlwind of emotions. Yusuf spent his time catching up with his parents, listening to their stories, their laughter, their silences. He could sense a change in them, a fragility that went beyond their physical ailments. They seemed burdened, their eyes often distant, lost in some unspoken memory. At night, as Yusuf lay in his childhood bedroom, he became aware of the home's eerie silence. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves outside his window and the distant barking of dogs. He felt a chill run down his spine, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck. It was as if he was being watched, a presence lurking in the shadows. One night, he woke to a strange sound. It was a soft scratching coming from the other side of his bedroom wall. He sat up in bed, his heart pounding in his chest. The scratching stopped. He listened intently but heard nothing except the beating of his own heart. He tried to rationalize the sound, attributing it to an overactive imagination, the product of jet lag and stress. But deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. The next morning, he found his parents huddled together in the kitchen, their faces pale with fear. Fear and paranoia began to grip the household. Yusuf, raised on logic and reason, tried to find rational explanations for the strange occurrences, but the fear in his parents' eyes was undeniable.
"Yusuf, there's something you should know. There's a disturbed man who has been seen lurking around the neighborhood." Yusuf started noticing small, inexplicable things. Objects moving slightly, doors creaking open. He started taking precautions, double-checking the locks on the doors and windows. One evening, Yusuf noticed fresh scratches on the wooden door leading to the backyard.
"We should perhaps consult the pier."
Yusuf's friend, Omar, invited him to a gathering at his home. The house buzzed with laughter and conversation. The aroma of wazwan, the traditional Kashmiri feast, filled the air, momentarily pushing aside the fear and uncertainty that had plagued Yusuf. "Yusuf, the food smells amazing, Omar. It's been so long since I've had a proper wazwan." As the night wore on and the kava flowed, the conversation turned to local legends and folklore. Someone mentioned the Gawkadal Bridge, a stone bridge that arched over the Jhelum River, its beauty masking a dark and tragic history. Local friend: "It is said that the bridge is haunted." Omar's grandfather, a wizened old man with piercing blue eyes, spoke in a low voice. Local friend: "Many innocent lives were lost there, and their souls are unable to find peace." He went on to narrate the harrowing tale of the Gawkadal massacre, a dark chapter in Kashmir's history. Local friend: "They say that on certain nights you can still hear their cries, their pleas for justice." That night, sleep evaded Yusuf. The story of the Gawkadal Bridge had ignited a morbid curiosity within him. He couldn't shake off the image of the massacre, the cries of the victims echoing in his ears. Driven by an inexplicable urge, he decided to visit the bridge. "Yusuf, I need to see it for myself. Maybe then I can find some peace." The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves as he approached the bridge. A street lamp cast an eerie yellow glow, its light struggling to penetrate the thick fog that had descended over the city. The Jhelum River flowed silently below, its dark waters reflecting the city lights like shattered stars. As Yusuf stepped onto the bridge, A cold wind swept across his face, carrying with it a faint, mournful cry. He stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel a presence, cold and oppressive, surrounding him. He looked around, but the bridge was deserted. The cry came again, this time closer, filled with an unbearable sadness. A figure emerged from the fog, slowly walking towards him. It was a young girl, her long black hair cascading down her back, her clothes torn and bloodied. Her face, pale and gaunt, was streaked with tears. She stopped a few feet away from Yusuf, her dark, hollow eyes boring into his. "Crying girl, help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rushing sound of the river below. Yusuf tried to speak, but no words came out. He was paralyzed with fear, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. The girl extended a hand towards him, her fingers long and bony, her touch as cold as ice. "Crying girl, they're coming for us." Yusuf turned to see what she was looking at. The fog on the bridge was swirling, taking on grotesque shapes. He could make out figures, dozens of them. Men, women, children, their faces contorted in pain and fear. They were floating towards him, their hands reaching out, their hollow eyes burning with an unearthly light. Yusuf, no, this can't be real. Terror lent speed to Yusuf's feet. He ran, his lungs burning, his heart pounding against his ribs. He didn't dare look back. The girl's cries, the ghostly figures imprinted on his mind. He didn't stop running until he reached the familiar streets of his childhood neighborhood.
Yusuf, what's wrong? Yusuf tried to speak, to tell them what he had seen, but the words wouldn't come out. He could only point towards the door, towards the bridge, towards the horrors he had witnessed. As he looked at his parents, truly looked at them, he noticed something strange. Their features seemed to blur, their forms flickering like a candle flame in the wind. S1. He burst through the door of his home, gasping for breath, his clothes drenched in sweat. His parents rushed to his side, their faces etched with concern.
Yusuf's parents had died a week after he left for America. A car accident, the letter from his uncle had said. The news had reached him too late. He had been unable to attend their funeral, unable to say goodbye. He looked at the figures standing before him, their forms now solidifying, their features becoming clearer. His mother, her face etched with the pain of his absence. His father, his eyes filled with a silent plea for forgiveness. He understood now. The scratches on the walls, the strange noises, the scent of sandalwood, it all made sense. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't imagining things. Yusuf collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He had been so blinded by his own grief, his own guilt, that he had failed to see the truth. He had been so caught up in his own world that he had forgotten the sacrifices his parents had made for him, the love that had transcended death itself. As he looked at his parents, he felt a wave of love wash over him, a love so pure, so strong, that it eclipsed the fear that had gripped him for so long.
I'm here, and I understand. A sense of peace settled over the room. The air, which had been thick with sorrow and longing, felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. His parents, their forms shimmering, their faces radiating love, moved towards him.
As the first rays of dawn pierced through the darkness, Yusuf watched as his parents faded away, their forms dissolving into motes of light. He was left with a profound sense of peace, a knowledge that transcended the realm of the living. He knew that he would never be truly alone, that his parents would always be with him, in his heart, in the whispers of the wind, in the rustling of leaves. Yusuf's experience at Gawkadal Bridge was a chilling reminder that there are forces beyond our understanding, realms that exist just beyond our perception. It taught him that death is not the end, but a transition, a journey into the unknown, It also highlighted the importance of respecting the sanctity of places like Gawkadal Bridge, places where the veil between the living and the dead wears thin. If you're brave enough to confront the unknown, if you dare to venture into the realm of the paranormal, then subscribe to my channel. But be warned, once you step into the world of the paranormal, there's no turning back. The veil between worlds is thin, and what you see may haunt you forever.